The air in Manila was heavy that afternoon, not just with heat, but with the thick dust of forgotten roads and the scent of old engine oil, the kind of heat that sank into your bones and made your breath feel like it had weight. Children darted barefoot through narrow alleys, their laughter bouncing off rusted sheet metal and faded concrete. Street vendors shouted their offers in Tagalog, swatting flies away from trays of skewered meats, while tired mothers watched from behind plastic chairs, their eyes glassy from another long day. Life pulsed loudly here, raw and uninterrupted. Amara stood out. Her skin, a deep brown shade kissed by the African sun, shone under the Manila haze. She was small, no more than 8, but her posture already held the stiffness of someone used to walking behind others. Her mother, a South African humanitarian, had joined an outreach delegation bringing supplies to Southeast Asian communities. They had been in the Philippines for 2 days, visiting makeshift schools and clinics on the edges of the capital. Amara came along because there was no one to leave her with back home, and because her mother believed children needed to see the world, especially the parts no one showed in brochures. But today, Amara had drifted away. She didn't mean to. The group had stopped outside a gymnasium on the corner of a cracked avenue, where paint peeled from the walls like old memories. While her mother spoke with volunteers in a courtyard nearby, Amara had heard something, a rhythm, a pulse, like music but louder, more alive. It came from the building across the street. She crossed over hesitantly, pressed between bodies much taller than hers, drawn toward the sound. Inside, the gym was hot and buzzing with excitement. There was no air conditioning, just ceiling fans that spun slowly, barely pushing the stale air. The crowd was packed shoulder to shoulder, eyes all focused on the ring in the center. In the ring, a man danced, not with grace, but with purpose. His fists moved like questions and answers at the same time, striking the pads his trainer held with mechanical precision. The sweat on his back glistened under the overhead lights. His expression was pure focus, unshakable. The name murmured through the crowd, sometimes whispered, sometimes shouted like prayer. Pacquiao. Amara didn't know the name. Not really. She had seen his face on banners, heard grown-ups mention him in passing. To her, he was just another man with muscles and a big crowd. But something about the way people looked at him made her stay. There was awe in their eyes, the kind people usually reserved for statues in churches. This man was real, and somehow important. Her stomach growled. It wasn't new. She had skipped breakfast because they'd left early that morning, and the lunch stop had been delayed. But now, with the air thick and her legs tired, the hunger became a throb. Her eyes darted to a vendor near the back of the gym selling snacks, fried bananas, plastic cups of iced tea. Her hand instinctively reached toward her pocket. Empty. She looked up at the man in the ring again. He'd finished his routine now, handing off his gloves, smiling at a few local kids who reached up for high fives. The energy had shifted slightly, less focused, more celebratory. A voice in her heart urged her forward, and before she could stop herself, she stepped closer to the barricade that separated the crowd from the ring area. A security guard noticed her. He frowned. "Miss, are you lost?" he asked in English, kneeling slightly to her height. Amara shook her head. Her voice was soft, barely more than a whisper. "I'm hungry." He blinked, surprised. "Sorry?" She swallowed, louder this time. "I said, I'm hungry." For a second, everything slowed. The man's brow furrowed. He looked around. No adult nearby, just this small girl with big eyes and a voice full of need. He motioned to a colleague with his radio. The message traveled fast, and within minutes it reached the ears of Manny Pacquiao himself, who was wiping his face with a towel in the corner of the gym. "What happened?" Pacquiao asked one of his aides. "A little girl, sir, foreign, said she's hungry. Alone, we think." He paused. Manny had been asked for autographs, interviews, campaign endorsements, but this was different. He looked toward the crowd, where the security guard was standing next to a thin, dark-skinned child with tired eyes and empty hands. Without a word, he handed his towel to an assistant, stepped off the platform, and walked through the barrier. The room quieted, heads turned. Manny Pacquiao, the people's champion, was moving through the crowd, not away from the cameras but toward the girl. He knelt in front of her, face open, eyes kind. "Hi," he said simply. "What's your name?" "Amara." "Where's your mother?" "She's helping across the street." "You're hungry?" She nodded. Her chin trembled just a little, not from fear, but from shame. She wasn't used to saying it out loud. In her world, you didn't admit that kind of thing. But this man wasn't laughing, he wasn't turning away. He stood up, held out his hand. "Come with me." There was a pause, a beat. The crowd murmured in confusion. But Amara reached up and took his hand, and just like that they walked through the gym together. Past the security team, past the flashing phones, past every boundary drawn by wealth, fame, and language. Inside a modest lounge behind the ring, Manny gestured to a table. An assistant brought food, chicken adobo, rice, fresh mango slices. Pacquiao waved him away and served the plate himself. The scent hit Amara like a wave. She sat and ate quickly, head down, not speaking. Manny watched, not saying much either. When she finished, she looked up, expecting him to be gone. But he was still there. "Better?" he asked. She nodded. "Where are you from, Amara?" "South Africa." "What are you doing in Manila?" "My mom helps kids. She said it's important to see the world." He smiled. "She's right." She blinked. "Why did you help me?" The question landed heavier than she meant it to. But Manny Pacquiao didn't flinch. He leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, eyes remembering something far away. "Because once," he said slowly, "I was the hungry one." Amara stared. He looked so strong now, so certain, so famous. The idea that this man had once felt what she felt was like hearing a mountain used to be a pebble. "I used to fight for food," he continued. "Not in a ring, on the streets. My family had nothing. One day I stole bread. I was caught. The man who owned the bakery didn't punish me. He gave me more bread. He said, 'Your hunger is not your fault.' I never forgot that." She didn't respond. Her small fingers traced the edge of the plate. "I've never told that to anyone," Manny added. "Not even the press." "Why me?" "Because you reminded me what matters." There was no applause, no dramatic music, just the sound of ceiling fans whirring and the hum of voices beyond the wall. A moment later, his aide returned with a phone. "Sir, the press is waiting." Manny stood. But before he left, he turned back to Amara and said, "Don't ever be afraid to speak your truth, even if it's just that you're hungry." She nodded, and with that, the legend walked out of the room, leaving behind a full stomach, a changed child, and a silence filled with meaning. The streets of Manila were beginning to cool, but only slightly. Late afternoon haze clung to the buildings like mist that forgot how to lift. Outside the gymnasium, cameras had gathered, crowding around the entrance like moths to a porch light. Manny Pacquiao had stepped back into the main hall briefly, long enough to offer a short, vague explanation to the press, something about taking a brief personal errand. The cameras pressed in, hungry for more, but he didn't entertain them. With a few words to his security team, he gestured for Amara to follow him toward a small, dark van idling at the rear exit. No one argued. They knew better. Amara sat in the passenger seat of the armored vehicle, her legs barely reaching the edge of the cushion. The door closed behind her with a mechanical thunk, muffling the chaos outside. Inside, it was cool and quiet. Pacquiao slid in beside her and nodded to the driver, who pulled away without question. For a long moment, they didn't speak. The silence wasn't awkward, it was full. The kind of silence that people who have nothing to prove to each other can share without discomfort. Amara's hands were folded on her lap, and she glanced sideways at the man sitting next to her. He was texting someone on his phone, then paused, looked at her and smiled gently. "Do you want to see where I grew up?" he asked. She nodded. The van turned off the main roads, easing into older neighborhoods that the city's rapid modernization had left behind. The buildings grew shorter, the sidewalks more broken. Small shops gave way to clusters of makeshift homes built with scrap wood and bent corrugated metal. Children darted between piles of discarded tires and plastic bags, and the air was thick with the scent of fried food, gasoline, and standing water. Manny pointed out the window. "That alley," he said, "was where my brother and I used to sleep. We didn't always have a house. We'd lay down cardboard under that awning there and listen to the sound of tricycles passing by. Sometimes the drivers would toss us leftover rice if they had any." Amara pressed her face closer to the window, trying to imagine it. Her mind had seen poverty. She had lived it in parts of her own city, but there was something raw about this. This wasn't just surviving. This was surviving invisibly. "Did you ever get scared?" she asked. He looked out for a moment before answering. "Yes, all the time. But not of what you might think, not of being hurt. I was scared of being forgotten, of being nothing." She didn't know how to respond to that, so she stayed quiet. But the words settled in her chest like a stone. There was truth in them, a kind of truth that had no accent and belonged to no one country. The van turned again, pulling up to a narrow side street where a bright but weathered banner hung across a low building. Pacquiao Foundation for Hunger and Hope. The building looked unassuming, painted in fading yellow with metal bars over the windows and a chipped wooden sign. But inside, the walls were alive with color, hand-painted murals of children, boxing gloves, sunrises. The front room buzzed with activity. Volunteers sorted food packages. Children lined up quietly, plates in hand, waiting for their turn at a modest buffet. Manny placed his hand gently on Amara's shoulder and guided her through the door. Eyes turned toward them, and a few gasps escaped from behind half-bitten spoonfuls. The room fell into a hush. He gave a nod, almost embarrassed, then walked her to the middle of the room. He turned to one of the staff members and whispered a few words. Then, without warning, took a microphone from a small sound system near the corner. A few of the younger children giggled nervously. Amara stood close to him, uncertain, watching. Manny tapped the mic once, and his voice carried through the room. "Today," he began, "I was reminded of something I thought I had outgrown. Hunger." There was no dramatic pause, no shift in tone. He wasn't performing, he was confessing. "This girl next to me, her name is Amara. She came from very far away. She said something to me this afternoon that shook me, something I haven't heard in a long time, not in the way she said it. She said, 'I'm hungry,' and I remembered how those words feel when you mean them." The staff and children listened wide-eyed. "Hunger is not just about food," he continued. "It's about being unseen, being told your voice doesn't matter. When I was your age," he looked toward a boy near the front, "I stole pound de sal from a market because I hadn't eaten in 2 days. A man caught me. I thought he would beat me, but he gave me more bread. He told me, 'This isn't your fault.' That moment changed me." He glanced down at Amara, "And today she reminded me that no matter how far you go, you're never above your beginnings." He stepped back from the mic. The room remained still, like it hadn't yet realized what had just happened. Then one of the volunteers, an older woman with short hair and a lanyard, began to clap. Slowly, others joined. Soon the room filled with applause, not loud, not wild, but warm, honest. Afterward, Manny led Amara through the rooms of the foundation. They visited the small classroom where children received tutoring after meals. He showed her a wall of photographs, his old training days, community events, his mother standing beside him in a dirt lot, both of them younger, thinner, smiling like they had just survived something enormous. She pointed at a picture of a boy with split shoes and a cut lip. "That's me," he said. "No way," she whispered. "I wasn't born like this," he said. "I fought for every single thing." They went outside where a few kids were playing with a half-deflated basketball. Manny bent down, picked it up, and shot it into a rusted hoop. The ball bounced off the rim and landed in Amara's hands. She laughed, genuine and surprised. For a moment, the champion and the child played together as if neither had a past. As the sun began to dip below the skyline, turning the Manila sky a bruised pink, they returned to the van. This time, the silence between them was different. Not full, not tense, but glowing, the way silence feels when two people no longer need to explain themselves. Back inside the vehicle, Amara turned to him. "Why me?" she asked again. "You were the only one who spoke." She looked out the window at the blur of buildings. "I didn't think anyone would listen." He nodded. "Most people don't. But the ones who do? They change everything." The van pulled up near the school where her mother was now waiting, worried but relieved. She rushed over, hugging Amara tightly, thanking Manny profusely. He waved her off gently, humble as always. Before she left, Amara looked up at him one last time. "Will I see you again?" He smiled, leaned down and whispered, "Maybe not me, but you'll see what we did together." She didn't fully understand what he meant, but something inside her believed it. And then she was gone, walking beside her mother, vanishing into the noise of the street. Manny Pacquiao stood still for a moment, watching them disappear. He didn't go back inside the gym, he didn't call the press. He just stood there, under the dusky light, remembering the bread he had once stolen and the words that had forgiven him. The story should have ended there. A girl says she's hungry, a famous man listens, he feeds her, shows her where he came from and sends her back to her mother. It could have been just that. A private moment, soft and unforgettable for only those involved. But nothing remains small for long when it brushes against the edges of greatness. Not when the world is watching. Not when the man in the story is Manny Pacquiao. The footage surfaced first on a local vlogger's YouTube channel, a rough cut filmed on a shaky phone. The moment Pacquiao walked through the gym to take the hand of a small black girl no one recognized. The girl's face was partially obscured, but the audio was clear enough to catch a soft voice saying, "I'm hungry," and the champion's answer, "Come with me." It spread in silence first. A few thousand shares, a few stunned comments. Then someone with a large following reposted it with the caption, "This is what real leadership looks like." From there, it took on a life of its own. By the time Amara was on a plane heading back to Johannesburg, the video had gone viral across 3 continents. News outlets scrambled to verify the girl's identity. Journalists speculated endlessly. Was it staged? A political stunt? Had Pacquiao known the cameras were rolling? His camp declined interviews. His team issued a simple, cryptic statement. Sometimes compassion is louder than headlines. Still, the coverage exploded. American morning shows played the clip alongside old footage of Pacquiao's toughest fights, juxtaposing uppercuts with kindness. African networks speculated on Amara's background, trying to piece together who she was and why she had been in Manila. The response was overwhelmingly positive, yet the noise around the moment began to drown out the moment itself. What few people realized was that behind the scenes, Pacquiao had already begun working. Quietly, without press conferences or political banners, he had called a meeting with the director of the foundation he had taken Amara to. He asked them a simple question: what would it take to feed 10,000 children a year? They gave him a number, he doubled it. Then he got on a call with Amara's mother, Lindiwe, a community organizer who had never spoken to someone that famous in her life. She expected red tape, bureaucratic negotiations, a delay wrapped in politeness. But instead, she heard a calm, determined voice say, "I want to work with you. I don't want this to end with her." Together, over the next few months, their teams began building something new, an international partnership called the Empty Plate Project, focused on food insecurity in under-resourced neighborhoods across Southeast Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa. It started with school lunch programs but quickly evolved: mobile pantries, micro-farming training for single mothers, and emergency hunger relief for areas hit by conflict or disaster. The project gained traction not because of aggressive marketing, but because of the authenticity at its core. Every presentation, every brochure carried the same story. A little girl said she was hungry, and someone listened. For Amara, life didn't exactly return to normal. How could it? But she tried. She was 9 now, a little taller, her voice still soft but steadier. At school, some of her classmates teased her, called her the hunger girl at first, not out of cruelty, but the strange way children try to understand something that's too big for them. But over time, something shifted. Teachers asked her to speak at assemblies. A local newspaper interviewed her and printed her photo on the cover under the headline, "The Girl Who Changed a Champion." She wasn't sure she liked that. She didn't feel like she had changed anyone. All she had done was tell the truth. One day, her teacher asked her to prepare a short speech for a district-wide youth summit on justice and leadership. At first, she didn't know what to say. She wasn't a politician. She hadn't done anything big, not really. But her mother encouraged her to tell the story as it happened, not the one the media had rewritten, not the cleaned-up version for the brochures, the real one. So that's what she did. Standing on a stage in a modest auditorium with folding chairs and warm lights, Amara told a crowd of high schoolers and NGO organizers what had happened that day. She told them about the gym in Manila, about the smell of the air, the way her stomach ached, the way his gloves looked when he took them off. She told them she didn't even know who Manny Pacquiao was at the time. She just knew she was hungry. "And I thought," she said, "if I don't say it out loud, no one will know. So I said it. And he heard me." There was a long pause after she finished. Not silence, the kind of hush filled with people holding their breath because something sacred has just passed between them. Then came the applause, not thunderous, but deep, lasting. The kind that reaches the back wall of the room and comes back changed. Back in the Philippines, Pacquiao watched a recording of the speech on a laptop in his office. Alone. He smiled the entire time, not broadly, but with the quiet satisfaction of a man who sees the past finally teaching something to the present. When the speech ended, he closed the laptop, stood, and walked over to a glass case near the wall. Inside it, resting gently on a white cloth, was the ceramic plate Amara had eaten from that day in the gym. He had kept it, not out of sentimentality, but because it reminded him that some victories are quiet. Not long after that, Pacquiao returned to the foundation for a low-key anniversary event. He wore jeans and a simple polo, no entourage, no announcement. The children there had changed, some older, some new. He gave a short, impromptu speech, thanking the volunteers, reminding the kids that hunger didn't define them. When one little girl asked if the story about the black girl was true, he chuckled and said, "Yes, her name is Amara. She saved something in me I thought was already dead." He didn't explain what. He didn't need to. Over the years, the project expanded further. Through partnerships with food banks, rural clinics, and local governments, the Empty Plate project became a multinational model for sustainable hunger response. Pacquiao rarely took credit. He preferred to stay close to the work, visiting sites, reviewing budgets, meeting mothers who reminded him of his own. And in every new kitchen they built, every mobile unit they dispatched, they stamped a phrase on the interior wall: "Someone listened." Amara grew into a thoughtful teenager with a quiet intensity and a sharp mind. She had begun writing, small essays mostly, about justice, memory, and what it means to be visible in a world that often looks away. Her voice was stronger now, but she never forgot how it had first trembled. For her 14th birthday, she received a small package in the mail with no return address. Inside was a copy of a photograph, grainy and faded, printed on matte paper. It was her and Pacquiao standing in the foundation that day, surrounded by kids, holding hands. Behind it, in careful cursive, were the words, "The smallest voices shake the largest rooms. Never stop speaking." No signature. That night, she placed the photo in a frame and set it on her desk beside her notebooks. Then she opened a new page and wrote the words that had changed her life. "I'm hungry." She stared at them for a long time, letting them echo across the years. Then she wrote the rest of the story, not the one the world told, but the one only she knew. Somewhere across the ocean, Manny Pacquiao stepped into an empty boxing gym. He wasn't training anymore. Not really. His time in the ring had passed. But the rhythm of it still called to him. The echo of gloves against pads, the faint scent of sweat and canvas. He stood in the center, breathing in the quiet. Then, almost without thinking, he shadowboxed once, twice, soft punches into air as if striking at something invisible, not an opponent, a memory. He stopped, stood still, and smiled. Outside, the city roared on, but inside, in that moment, there was peace.